Welcome to the latest episode of the Low Production High Value Show, a show for and about entrepreneurs.
Next up, my conversation with Tiffany Quinn from Generate Leads, where we talk about content marketing for niche audiences. Hi, Tiffany. Welcome to the show. It's great to have you.
Thank you, Andrew. It's great to be here.
Starting off on the fun side of things. So, as I alluded to when we first spoke, what struck me as interesting for the work that you do is content marketing in the context of the construction industry. And it's not an industry that people would think about content marketing. And so I'm curious for you just to share what brought that about. How did you evangelize or advocate for content marketing in an industry that most people wouldn't think about it?
I have an undergraduate degree in marketing. Then I spent my entire life in face-to-face sales. And then I went back and did a master's in digital marketing. And I've been in and around the construction industry, architecture, engineering, construction, since kind of the late 90s. And I think when you put all that together, the marketing, the face-to-face sales, and the knowledge of the construction industry, it became more and more apparent to me that when you are selling construction, and whether that's the professional services, the consultancy side of it, or the contracting side of it, when you're selling that, you are really selling people, you know. You're selling an approach, you're selling a methodology, you're selling expertise, knowledge, experience, qualifications, track record. And of course, in order to convey the stories about those things, content is the perfect vehicle for those stories to convey that thought leadership piece. So while it is an industry that has not traditionally embraced thought leadership content marketing, it is very well suited to it.
Well, and did you see, were there some early players that were doing it, maybe not necessarily doing it well, but at least trying? Or was it, again, sort of like just near non-existent?
That's a great question. In Ireland, I was probably, not being arrogant, but I was probably the first one.
That's not arrogant.
I was a director in a large construction company, marketing director, and I was following the likes of HubSpot, right? I was following the likes of HubSpot, and this was 15 years ago. And I was reading their blogs, and it was all about, understanding your audience, understanding their problems, and creating content that positions you as somebody who has a solution for those problems. And I was embedded in that kind of thinking 15 years ago. And I said, I can apply this. I can apply this here in what I'm doing now. And I started doing it. Honestly, there's very few players, certainly in the Irish market, who are doing thought leadership content marketing properly. They think they're doing it.
Sort of paying it lip service?
Probably. There's probably a bit of lip service. There's probably a lack of strategy. There's not enough exploration. There's not enough time invested in understanding the pain points they're really solving and constructing a narrative around that. So there's probably a number of factors leading it. They're probably not paying somebody like me to oversee it.
Well, so when you, as you said, you were paying attention to what HubSpot was doing, and they were advocating for inbound marketing by being an outbound marketing machine, frankly.
Yes.
A bit of irony there. But when you were talking to colleagues, were your colleagues a receptive audience, or were you kind of pushing a rock up a hill? Was it a challenge to convince them?
I was so lucky. With my colleagues and with the senior leadership team that I had. They trusted me. They gave me latitude. I started to make videos, and I was showcasing those people and their unique set of skills and the unique approach and methodology that they had kind of, I suppose, created over the span of their careers. And I was telling stories about that. And in doing so, I think the senior leadership team where I was working saw this, and they absolutely loved it. So I got a few successes under my belt. And when I did that, they really kind of gave me a long rein.
And do you find that, do they get the idea of thought leadership? And sort of that's part one. And then part two is, how do you steer them from being self-promotional, and I'll call it salesy, to being true to the idea of thought leadership, where you're being informative, being educational, being helpful with your content? Jay Baer talks about being the best answer with your content to questions that your industry and your ICP have.
Do they get content marketing? The first part of your question. I don't think they would have put that label on it. They wouldn't, because they're not in the marketing space. So they wouldn't be using, marketing words like that. But what they did love was when they'd be at an event and they would meet somebody who was a target client for them, or somebody that they were, that they were already working with. And that target client would say something like, "You're doing really well. I saw that you completed that project. That was a very challenging project. I have a project coming up that has similar challenges. Can we talk about it?" They loved that, and that started to happen. So after a period of time, they did get it. They did get it. And then the second part of your question was, did they want to deviate into sales language? Well, because I kind of have a very airtight process in how I write the questions, I'd bring them with me. I would identify who was going to be in a video or who was going to write the article. And so I would bring them on the journey from the very start. We're not making an ad. We're making
Slow down.
content.
Stop selling.
Yeah, exactly. We're not making an ad. Stop trying to put ads on the internet and hope that somebody will see them. And I would literally use that kind of language to them. And it would take them a while because, yes, they did want to do ads. Yes, they absolutely did. We are great, aren't we?
It's what they knew.
Yeah. We are the leading number one, blah, 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 blah in Ireland. That was the favourite slogan.
Yes, and? Well, but the path that you described, so they're at an industry conference and then they're hearing from target customers like that, I'll call it, there's third-party validation that they've been seen, and they've been seen for noteworthy reasons. Some of that's organic, but to your point, like, you're trying to orchestrate that get seen part as part of your framework. But talk us through that get seen to build reputation, build trust, and then eventually, I'll call it, earn the right to sell or gain permission to be, a little more, I'll call it, forward.
Yeah.
What's your approach?
I think it was Seth Godin that called it permission marketing, didn't he? He kind of coined that.
I'm certain he's, whether he originated it or not, he's certainly an advocate for it.
Yeah, maybe you coined it, did you, Andrew?
No. I coined a lot of other things that haven't had any airtime.
Just need to write a few books. But, yeah, permission marketing. So get seen. So the marketing funnel, it's marketing 101. Every marketer should learn about this, but I don't know if they actually really do. But obviously the likes of you and me, we live by the funnel. Get seen, build trust, generate opportunities. And in the construction industry, in the industry that I'm in, what you will often find, and sometimes it makes me laugh, is they're trying to hit all stages of the funnel in one piece of marketing. So it could be a LinkedIn post that is basically an ad, and this LinkedIn post tries to create awareness, provide an opportunity for the audience to evaluate, and it tries to create a lead all in one LinkedIn post. Or it could be...
That's some heavy lifting on one LinkedIn post.
Exactly. And then there's the blog that goes on the website that nobody's ever going to see, that reads like advertorial in a newspaper. So your question was the funnel. Yeah. So yes, one of the big challenges that I have is helping them to understand about the funnel, the stages of awareness, even at the awareness stage. Frankly, with a lot of the audience that I'm creating content for, they probably are, some of them might be unaware that they even have a problem. So it's about helping them to see, not only do you have a problem, but there is a solution for it. And not only is there a solution for it, there are many solutions for it, but ours is the best because we do thought leadership content marketing. So it can be very nuanced, the funnel. But when you zoom out on it, it's very simple.
Well, I'm going to use a Canadian example. Sometimes in the construction field, there will be the securing of the land. And then there could be years before construction gets underway and so on. And if it's similar in Ireland, does that, I'm assuming it has a dramatic effect on the kind of marketing activity you're doing at the different stages, because if there's a lull or a lag or a delay because of government approvals and just getting underway, I'm curious to know from your standpoint, how do you navigate that and how do you sustain, I'll call it, attention when things can be drawn out?
Well, we're not selling trainers, sneakers. We're selling very high value. It's a high value sale, right? It's not a commodity, it's a high value sale. And in Ireland, we've got planning bottlenecks and infrastructure bottlenecks I would say ours would rival any country's, honestly.
Okay.
Like, it could take 6 years from the point of purchasing that greenfield site to actually putting a shovel in the ground. So
Mhm.
it can be very protracted. But Ireland is very small. An awful lot of my clients are actually working all over Europe. You probably know, Andrew, that it's Irish expertise and the Irish approach that's being rolled out all over Europe to build data centers. It's Irish companies that are building these because we've perfected this Irish approach and now we're exporting the approach all over Europe. So yes, there is a protracted period, but we're not really selling the the sale of that one project. We are
But
selling the team that are going to deliver that project and the team that are going to deliver multiple other projects, and all the projects come on stream at different times. And you can embrace that lag in a way because you can tell stories about, I have one client who is an actual planning consultant. So I would tell quite a lot of stories about how they overcome challenges. We have a new 940-page planning act.
makes for a gripping read, I'm sure.
Like, apparently it was 10 lawyers and one planner that drafted it or something like that. The ratio was off. But anyway, point being, you can embrace that lag and you can create stories about it. You can create stories about how we had to get the planning and how we had to get Gas Networks Ireland and we had to get Irish Water and we had to carry out earth moving works because we discovered an archaeological site or whatever. And you can create stories about all that stuff every step of the way. So you're not just going to sit there and wait either.
But it's about compounding the messaging about expertise that, in a sense, regardless of project, that consistent thread is the thought leadership, conveying expertise and potentially tapping into the multiple personalities and individuals that are the subject matter experts.
Yeah,
I'm putting words in your mouth, but
that's exactly it. Thank you. That was very succinct.
are you hiring?
Way better than me.
Well, I want to jump back to something you were saying earlier about sometimes they aren't always certain that they have a problem or are aware that they have a problem. But that actually triggered something for me was this idea of they're in the construction industry. You're helping them from a marketing standpoint. Are they accustomed to or versed in marketing metrics? And because if they're not, that's part of the issue about knowing whether they have a problem or not. And how do you bridge that gap for telling them about the metrics that should matter to them, and I guess a bit of education that goes along with it.
Yeah. So I think this is going to be controversial now, but sure, look, I wouldn't have got to where I am today if I wasn't controversial. I think there's a lot of marketing agencies that are swizzing their clients with metrics. Okay.
Like burying them in metrics and
There's
overwhelming them, or just smoke and mirrors.
swizzing. If something is a swizz, I don't know, it's like, it's a bit of a pig in a poke. It looks like something that it isn't, you know? So,
Do you mean like a vanity metric, like a like and a
so
follow,
they,
glossing things over?
they would be using words like click-through rate, CTRs, and impressions. Oh, none of these words mean anything to the CEO of a construction company or of a professional services firm, right? They've just heard somewhere that, oh yeah, I need click-through rates and I need impressions and I need Google AdWords and I need all these things. I need pay-per-click and I need Google Analytics. They've heard all these words floating around in the ether because they're clearly intelligent people and they live in the business world. They've heard these, and then marketing agencies come along and say, "Oh, look at your post." And the guy will be like, "Well, it only got 5 likes." "Oh yeah, but look at the CTR and look at the PPC and look at the impressions and look at the blah blah blah, the cost per meal and all these, right? All these words I learned in digital marketing college and never used. But metrics, are they well versed in metrics? It goes back to meeting the guy up at the bar at the event. That is the only metric that they care about. Seriously, that is the only metric that they care about. They want to be at an event or out and about or at a meeting, and they want somebody who has the ability to give them a job to tell them that they saw their stuff on the event.
So how do you de-Swizzify the marketing? I refer to it as, and again, this is not me trying to pull a Seth Godin taking credit, this idea of the so what or the actionable insight. So digital marketing has no shortage of data, but elements of the data would be meaningful to that person. And as you're saying, they want something to happen online that causes someone to walk up to them at the cocktail party at the conference and say, saw your stuff, we face the same issue, would love to talk more. And so that closing of the loop of something happened online that translated to an offline interaction. But it's, beyond that online to offline, are there some so what metrics or actual insights that you tend to focus on to bridge that gap with them?
Yeah, I do. I focus on how many staff members of the company liked, commented, shared, got involved in the conversation. That's one I love to focus on. I go, look at this post here. See how well this one performed in terms of senior leaders in the construction industry looking at it. Because obviously, by the way, I'm only talking about LinkedIn. But see how well this one performed. Let's understand why this one performed so well. Oh, the reason it performed so well is because 4 people that are employees in your company commented on it. And they started a conversation. And therefore, more people saw it. I see those as good metrics. I see the metrics as an opportunity to compare what drives this virality that they all kind of think they want and need, but actually after they talk to me for a while, they realize I don't need virality. I only need one person to see it and give me
It's
an
about the
800 million euro job.
substantiveness of it, right?
Yeah. I only need one person to see it and give me an 800 million euro job. That is literally...
That happens every day.
Yeah, but that's the industry I operate in.
Well, but you've opened a thread there. I was just running some metrics for a client that is in architecture, and the company page is doing fine. But when you marry the performance of the 2 principals of the firm and how they're doing on LinkedIn, and it goes back to a company page is going to do fine, but LinkedIn, it's very clearly stipulated by them that they're putting the emphasis on individuals. And so if, as you're describing, if those 2 to 4 employees can be commenting and initiating conversations with a sort of the extended audience, there's more bang for buck, which leads me to ask, are you having those kind of conversations with the C-suite about mobilizing more employees, getting the C-suite more visible and social, getting them talking, leveraging subject matter experts, again, via content, via their own online presence? Are you having those kinds of conversations?
That's the only kinds of conversations I ever have. If I don't have direct access to the C-suite, and if they're not working with me, I don't want to do it. Honestly, that is a real thing. Like a real world example of that would be, I had a client, they were very successful, a consultancy firm working all over Europe, and they got bought, by a private equity firm or whatever. And when this change happened, I no longer had access to the C-suite. The C-suite was somebody else, and I no longer had direct access. And they wanted me to report into, I think it was a bid manager or, some other manager in the firm. And I tried it for a little while, and then I realized I'm not going to be successful if I don't have access to the C-suite. And I asked a number of times for that, and I wasn't getting it. So I said, lads, this isn't working. This isn't going to work for me. If I don't have access to the C-suite, I can't do what I need to do. And if I can't do what I need to do, I can't be successful. And if I'm not going to be successful, that'll give me anxiety, and I'm too old.
Your point, you're starting, I'll call it people first.
Yeah.
And company second, because
it's
people buy from people.
Yeah.
And a company doesn't walk up to me at a conference cocktail party. A person walks up to me. That sounds very simplistic, but that's the reality. I don't buy from this nameless, faceless entity. I'm buying from a person who ideally has built rapport and trust with me directly or indirectly, through content or a combination thereof.
In Ireland, golf is kind of where relationships are made, started, and they're nurtured and fostered on the golf course, okay? We might as well be honest, it is quite male. It's very typically a male domain. And this is what the lads love to do. They go for a game of golf, they have great chats, they go for a few pints afterwards, and this is how the relationships are made, which is great if you don't ever want to scale and you don't mind that your liver is becoming destroyed from
the byproduct.
Yeah, as I call it, professional drinking or work drinking. Okay, so what I say to the lads is, look, see what you're doing on the golf course. We can do that with the internet. We can actually create a profile for you. We can create rapport for you with these people. without you spending 4 hours on a golf course and another 4 hours in a pub. And when
And save your liver.
and save your liver. Or you can go drinking with your friends or your family or somebody. But I said to them, you can achieve that relationship management at scale on the internet to the point where they will feel like they know you when they eventually do pick up the phone or send you an email to ask you, can you give me a quote for this, or can you do a pre-qual for this? They will feel like they already know you because we've created a personal brand for you, a personal profile for you. And it takes them a while to get that because they do love playing the golf. They also love
It's a fun
cycling
way
up
to
a
get
mountain.
paid.
Yeah. They also love cycling up a mountain in Lycra. That's another thing they love to do in our industry. But you can actually, and obviously you need to do that. You need to do quite a bit of that. You need to do the face-to-face stuff. I'm not advocating that you don't. However, a lot of the clients I'm dealing with now, the people that they're selling to are in America. They're in Germany. They're in France. They're in Portugal. So how do you build that rapport that you would have built on a golf course? How do you do that online at scale?
Well, you talked about building thought leadership and personal brand. What's been your experience? Are you coaching them and almost to the point of, I'll call it scripting some of the things they should say to make it lessen their apprehension or make them less nervous? And have you worked with folks that are, I'll call it naturals at it, that have no qualms about being on camera or tell me where to stand and you don't need to tell me what to say. Like I'm assuming there's a spectrum because we've had some clients, as an example, where I don't want to be on camera. And I'll say, you're going to be on camera to have a conversation with me, but that doesn't mean the end product is going to have you on camera. I need to have that conversation with you so I can extract
the bits I need.
Your expertise and so on. But anyway, I'm just curious about what your experience has been in that vein.
Well, you don't make it onto senior leadership teams really in our industry unless you are an articulate person who can convey a narrative, and you don't make it into those positions if you're afraid to put yourself out there, because it's a huge part of what the job entails is having a personal brand. When you go down a little bit below the senior team, you will get a bit of reluctance and you'll get a bit of shyness and a bit of humility, and I can't look at myself. And I, like you, I offer that service where, first of all, we have an exploratory call. Then together, collaboratively, we draft the questions. Then I create sample answers for those questions. And then I send that off to them. And because they are high blue and green engineers, architects, project managers, these people actually do their homework. And by the time they come to be sitting in front of a camera, so I'll sit here, the cameras are on either side of me, they're being filmed. By the time they get there, they're a lot more comfortable. Mm-hmm. And obviously, I have done so much of this that I have developed ways of just putting them at ease and relaxing them. Do I coach them in what to say? I'm not going to lie, sometimes I do. Do people love it? 99% of people love me telling them what to say. Every now and again, you'll get somebody who goes, I feel like you were putting words in my mouth. And then I make an edit and they go, okay, you made me sound great.
We'll be back in a moment. And now, a word from our sponsor. Social media has become an imperative for almost every business. Discover how to successfully implement an effective social media strategy that is supported and integrated throughout every part of your organization with this essential book from our host, Andrew Jenkins, Social Media Marketing for Business, Scaling an Integrated Social Media Strategy Across Your Organization, is now available from Amazon or KoganPage.com. Now, back to the show.
I think to your point is by you giving them some suggested answers, or it's not that you're putting words in their mouth, you're giving them a potential direction and taking some of the heavy lifting or some of the pressure off them, and they can make it their own. Versus the analogy for me is like, instead of giving them a blank sheet of paper and the pressure to go fill this out, it's no, here's where we can go with this conversation. Here's some placeholders. Oh, and I want to hit the concepts of these. You don't have to hit every word. Just let's talk about what the overarching message is for those components. And I've had similar situations to you that I had a conversation with someone and you could see them looking up at the questions I provided earlier, and I said, stop, time out. I said, I'll give you the questions. Let's have a conversation. Just take a beat, take a deep breath, and then we started over, and it was a conversation. And then it looked
Because
all
they are subject matter experts.
yeah.
They're well able to talk about this stuff.
You just want to make it feel that it's a conversation, and you're tapping into their expertise versus some rigid interview or like interrogation.
Exactly. Or something
The
scripted.
Yeah, with the rise of AI and I think it was CEB that was bought by Gartner years ago, used to talk about how the buyer's journey, the buyers were 50 some percent along their journey before talking to a salesperson. And now there's this argument that because of AI, they're even further along their journey, avoiding, frankly, having a conversation with a salesperson. And I now have the capability of using an AI solution saying, build me a comparative table of vendor X against Y versus Z, etc.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering where the access to AI is influencing your approach to content marketing and the building of the thought leadership. And, I guess potentially, we've talked earlier about the funnel and, being seen to trust to the conversation at the cocktail party at the conference. So I'm just curious, are you refining, adjusting? What's the impact of AI thus far?
Three things. So, first of all, yes, it's great. It's a productivity tool. It can speed up a lot of things. We try not to use AI to remove steps in our workflow. We just try to use AI to speed up some of the steps in our workflow. We will use AI to ideate now. So we're using it as a productivity tool, but we're also using it as an ideation tool. And we're also using it to give us stronger muscles when it comes to animated graphics or editing or identifying cut downs or little snackable cuts, from a longer form video or from a longer form written piece. Yes, we're using it to streamline the process, I suppose, and take some of the sort of the grunt work away, but we're also using it to innovate. In terms of AI, I think the third thing is really, how would I put this? We have to put some strategic imperfections and messy realities into our content.
Want it to look perfect.
Don't want it to look perfect. We gotta let those people make a mistake, stumble on their words in a video, and leave it in. I just think you're right. You're absolutely right, Andrew. Like, I think there's a generation coming now where if they feel content has been created with AI, it immediately undermines that brand and the trustability of that brand for that generation, because they're so familiar with AI. They can spot it a mile off. Maybe some people of our generation mightn't spot it as quickly, although I'm getting better and better.
Well, we got some feedback from a client saying no more M dashes.
Yes.
Just because that's the one of the supposed telltale signs of AI.
Yes.
But I told my head of content, client X said no more M dashes. Even though I know part of her writing style as a human being is the inclusion of M dashes. And Ann Handley, who's a well-known content writer and co-founder of Marketing Profs, for those who might be familiar. She's a huge advocate for the M dash, and it is a stylistic choice. Fortunately, the proverbial "this is why we can't have nice things" AI has ruined it for everybody. There's certain contrast framing. No one has ever delved anymore or dived deeply. Like all these catchphrases that are somehow being overused and like now you have to filter out. But to your point, we're using Riverside to record our conversation right now. It has AI functionality to make clips. And we can actually literally in the editing process choose to take out filler words like ums and ahs and whatever, as well as shorten pauses if there's dead air. But we've actually been advised not to rip everything out. Like leave some ums and ahs and pauses because that's how people talk. And so you don't want it to sound overly polished or overly engineered.
I think like when I first got into TikTok, we all kind of went down this style of cutting every second of dead space, out of every sentence. And I actually think there's been a bit of a backlash against that now. A response.
Well, I mean, this podcast is called the Low Production High Value Show because I'm advocating for low production. Yes, I'm using Riverside that has some, enhanced features versus what Zoom might have, but you want it to feel a little more raw, a little more authentic. And the example I like to use is during COVID, we watched talk shows that were recorded over Zoom, and we just accepted it. Like it was just, okay, well, this is the reality now. And the pendulum hasn't necessarily swung back the other way. People are accepting recording, virtually recording in remote locations, and they're not about the production value, they're more about the substance of the content. And did I learn something from it? Was it entertaining, engaging, etc.? But I wanted to go back to that idea of the getting seen and building trust. But you talked about how AI is, you're not replacing steps, but you're doing many of the steps faster or like more efficiently or innovatively. But in your industry, if you have a new client that, I'll just put it out there, wants to be seen, is it still a matter of, telling them to be patient, even though the AI can help, expedite certain things? It's still it's going to take us at least 6 months to lay the groundwork, build momentum, and so on. Are you advising them to be patient and leveraging AI to help in that journey?
Okay. So if they want to be seen quickly, what
But is that an unrealistic expectation,
in 6 months?
especially in B?
In 6 months.
Well, yeah. I mean, 6 months is more reasonable, but we often saying to clients, I'm not turning Facebook on today or bringing your LinkedIn company page back to life today, and leads will be, pounding your door tomorrow. That's just not how this works. But I'm just wondering
So
how you set expectations.
do you know what? I drew this in a meeting the other day,
Okay,
right?
there's a heart.
There's a heart,
Oh, there we go.
and
Okay.
in the middle of a heart, the heart is the lead, right? So this is literally how my brain works. So the lead is in the middle, and the lead is like the thing that we all want and love. So that's why she's got a heart around her, because she's the holy grail. That's what we want, right? And then I've got loads of arrows going into the heart, right? And in the arrows, we have LinkedIn, e-blasts, events, calls to action, website, coffee, face-to-face meetings, phone calls, emails, golf, cycling. So what I'm basically saying to them is that we have multiple platforms at our disposal. And the more of these platforms that we use, the greater the awareness we're going to create and the faster we're going to create it. We need to be creating content to put out across these channels. We need to identify what are the most effective channels to reach our target audience, which is something that we don't just automatically know. We have to do our research and we have to do our workshop. Who are the people we want to reach and where do they hang out? Are they up a mountain on a bicycle, or are they on LinkedIn? Where are they? Are they reading The Currency? Or are they reading the New York Times, The Economist? Where are they, right? So what I always say to these people is, it's really up to you. If you want to get seen quickly, let's do more stuff on more platforms, and let's combine that with face-to-face stuff as well.
Well, does that, going back to something you were saying earlier about, if you don't have access to the C-suite, you already
Yeah.
know that's going to present problems, or you don't want to engage. But I describe that as you have a seat at the table with the C-suite to hear from them directly about what their overarching strategy is, and then you have a conversation with about where and how digital marketing, and more specifically content marketing, can augment it. But using your doodle,
Yeah. I love heart with my arrows.
are you having those kind of conversations to say, like, let's talk about what your plans are for the next 6 months, regardless of digital, and then you talk about all the different things that can be done to
Around them.
serve that strategy?
Around them, because everything they're doing has a story behind it. Everything they're doing is going to reach the ears of some audience members. So if they want to amplify that, then you're exactly right, Andrew. If they finish a high profile project, for example, this project they've been working on it for 3 years. What's happening on the day of handover? We hand over the keys to the building, to the client. What's happening on that day? How are we recording this? What are we talking about? How are we marking this? How are we documenting it? And are we missing a trick here if we just put up one LinkedIn post saying, delighted to have worked on this building, and a picture of the building?
The humble brag. I am honored. I am very excited and honored which has become a bit of a joke. But this was a conversation I was having rather recently, this idea of, especially in this a similar industry, this idea of here's the before picture of before the project began. But there was some discussion about, do we even want a before picture, or do we wait until there's a before and after combination to talk about? And definitely you want the before and after combination when the keys are being handed over, like to talk about the milestone achievement, whatever. But part of me thinks there's something to be talked about at the launch, putting shovel into the ground kind of thing, because maybe that's the first chapter in the story, but it's still part of the story. And I'm wondering, do you strive to get them convinced to tell every chapter of the story or the arc? Or
Yeah, like an awful lot of it comes back to how much money they want to spend on marketing. So, and very often, Andrew, we're coming from a very low base because they've never spent money on marketing before. I mean, they had somebody who was, I have to be careful now, but somebody who was,
okay,
somebody who
it's
was,
just between you and me.
yeah, and the people on the internet. But yeah, they might have had somebody there who they might be a marketing manager, or they might be somebody who kind of purports to know something about social media, and they're throwing stuff up there, and they might be making decks for the MD, and they are called a marketing manager. The thing is that they would need to be much more strategic about that. So when you and I were having our call the last day, we talked about spray and pray. I use that word quite a lot, this spray and pray idea, that people think people are throwing stuff out there. They're spending money on it. They're buying tables at events, and who's at the event? They might spend 10 grand on an event to buy a table, but who's at the event? Only their competitors. And I say, why are you spending 10 grand on this table? We have to be seen. By who? By your competitors. And they're like, well, what would you do with the 10 grand? And I'm like, well, I'd make a video and I'd put it on the internet. I'd chop it up and put it on the internet for the next year and a half. And they go,
Or you could hold an event at a hotel nearby and invite people.
for your esteemed customers. So I can't remember what your question was, but I don't know
Well,
if I answered it.
it goes back to this idea of every client or every company has a story to tell, and multiple stories. And it goes back to my example of, like, do you just talk about when they put a shovel in the ground, the before
Oh, yeah.
versus the before and after? And just to pick up on what you were saying as well, is like, if they've never done traditional marketing before, but they spend 10 grand on a table at a some sort of dinner or an event or whatever, the conversations you've had to had about, like, I'm going to steer your spend over here, or let's force them to quantify the impact of the way they used to spend money. Sometimes I'll say, like, talk to me about the metrics that you've used before, and either they haven't used them very well, they sort of hang their head like a little embarrassed, like that they don't do a very good job of measurement, and now you're bringing in rigor to their approach.
Yes. So what are the metrics for spending, what return do you expect to get from spending 10 grand on the table at the event, the dinner? They usually don't have a metric in place. They just spend it because they feel they should.
It's what we've always done.
And it's what our competitors are doing. And there's some very clever salespeople in these organisations who've sold them this idea. And I have to tell you, Andrew, when I'm dealing with the aforementioned senior leadership people, they absolutely love the rigor. They love rigor. They love that balance that a marketer, a strategic marketer, would bring to the table, the balance between the creative and the rigor. Like, you'll get a lot of marketers who'll have creative ideas but no rigor, and you'll get a lot of marketers who are very rigorous but have no creativity or strategy. So you kind of have to hire, if you want to achieve the return on investment for your money. It's money that they would have wasted before that they are now getting value for. But to your point that you made earlier, it does take several months, a year and a half, 2 years to see the return. And that's what I often find with my clients. Like, if they stay with me for 2 years, they'll stay with me forever. Because they start to see the investment paying off. And I remember one of my clients said to me one day, "You're like a supplement." And I just thought that was brilliant. She said, I take a supplement for my hair, and I've been taking it for 6 months, and like, I genuinely do feel like my hair is glossier and healthier and more easily managed or whatever. And she said, "You're like that." She said, "It's like a supplement." I feel it's working. I know it's working. And now, sure, I couldn't stop it now.
Healthier hair, healthier bones.
But I also asked her, because she came to me at the start when we started working with them. And she came to me and said, I've loads of work, I've loads of business. I don't necessarily need more leads, because the name of my business is Generate Leads. She said, I don't necessarily need more leads. She said, I want the leads that I bring in to be more suitable for what we do. So she said, I have a full-time resource pricing tenders all day, every day, full-time. That's what she does, that resource. And she said, obviously, half of them, she said, we know we don't want them and we know we're not going to get them. And what she asked me for was a better quality of lead. And what is the metric for a better quality of lead?
Well,
Tell me.
I would imagine that there, with your help, is you're scoring them on some sort of scale or a set of criteria that denotes quality versus, 100 leads that waste your time versus 10 leads that meet your criteria that leads to more substantive conversation, potentially are of higher value. It stands to reason that would be better use of your time.
You're better at this than me. But I told her to open up her...
Why, thank you.
Like, she's a CFO. So the bottom line for her is when she opens up her software and she's able to track her number of tenders, conversions, and the profit margin on each one of those. That's how her brain works. And she opened it up and she looked at it and she said, we're doing fewer jobs and they're more profitable. They're bigger and they're more profitable. And I said, well, is that what we set out to achieve? And she said, yeah.
Well, and it stands to reason that there's given that she's a quantitative person,
yes,
that it would strike her as like, this is a better use of everyone's time. We're not cycles on busy work that's costly, that actually can drain margin. And it goes back to something I learned through some other folks that I worked with. Being bigger isn't necessarily more profitable.
I know.
And if you're not careful, the being bigger because it feels sexier or like some sort of lofty goal,
Yeah.
you can chase that and actually end up being less profitable and having less money at the end of the day. But the kind of, with that in mind, the fewer engagements and so on, where do you, when you're working with a client like that, where do you bucket the approach to content? Is it, I'll call it one level or one bucket is, I'll call it the company's presence, thought leadership. Then there might be project related content. Then there might be thought leaders or subject matter experts within the firm. There's the employer brand that we haven't talked about, but there's still something about that too. Maybe you tailor it on a client by client basis, but I'm just kind of curious about how you organize the buckets or the, lanes of strategy.
So at the very start, we ask them what their objectives are. And then we'll put the objectives into buckets, whether it's employer brand or showcasing projects or building personal brands for certain identified people in the business. We basically categorize them ourselves. And then based on the objectives, I'm a big fan of writing down the objectives at the very start and going back to them.
You told us this.
Yeah, you told us this. And
you
we
remember?
wrote it down. Yeah. And then because they are entrepreneurs, you're very often dealing with very entrepreneurial people and they will get and they'll get distracted by shiny things and they'll be like, but look at this over here, Tiff, look, could we do this? And I always say to them, I open up and it's just a simple spreadsheet. Well, it's not a simple spreadsheet. It's a big behemoth of a spreadsheet, but it's a spreadsheet nonetheless. And the objectives are in there. And I go back to the objectives and I go, do you remember 4 months ago we said we were going to aim for this? And then I developed a strategy for you, a plan for you to aim for those things. And they go, oh yeah. Oh yeah.
That's not on the list.
That's not it. And I go, why don't we finish out this 6 months, right? You've paid me to do a strategy. You've paid me to do a plan. Why don't you let me implement the plan? And then we can review at the end of the 6 months, potential improvements, potential changes. I've no doubt your target audiences, your target sectors may have crept a little bit. We can review all that and then we can refresh it again in 6 months' time. And they love that. It's back to your notion of rigor. they really enjoy that. They love having, what's the word? A boundary that they can push against that's solid.
Well, whether they want to acknowledge it or not, I mean, deep down they appreciate being reminded not to, don't drift away.
Yeah.
Don't drift away from the focus and the core strategy and the core objectives. Let's just steer you back.
Yeah.
Well, as we come to a close, if there was one thing about content marketing in, I'll call it niche industries, that you would want to leave as a piece of advice, what would that be?
Piece of advice. Okay. I mean, there's so many pieces of advice.
Okay, you can have more than one.
I think if I was to give one piece of advice, it would be figure out who your target audiences are and really spend some time to figure out what are the problems that are keeping them up at night. I think that's something that is, you see, because there's a kind of a cognitive bias or a cultural bias in leadership teams where there's an assumption that we all know who we're talking to and we all know what we have to say to them. But actually, hang on a second, your business has gone from 5 million to 100 million in 5 years, and you've hired new senior leadership team and the founder is still there, but all these new people have come in, and each one of those new people are bringing their own cognitive bias and their own assumptions. So yes, if I was to give one piece of advice, I'd be saying get those people in a room and work out who is the guy or guys you're talking to. A lot of people are targeting multiple audiences in multiple sectors. That's one of the challenges in what I do. Identify who they are, what their problems are, and what keeps them up at night. And then you can literally backwards engineer all your content into those problems and how you solve them. Tell stories about how you solve them.
Well, have you found, has it been in your experience that if you slow them down and in a sense you're forcing them to revisit their frame of mind about their ICP, and you're either confirming what they've described to you as their ICP, refuting it, or you're forcing them to evolve and expand who they thought their target customer or customers were?
Andrew, a lot of the time they have it wrong. So say you're a subcontractor who makes, I'm looking out at my balcony here. Say you're a contractor who makes and installs balconies on large residential developments, right? That's your goal. That's your do. I might go in and talk to a company, this is completely fictitious, but I might go in and talk to a company like that and I might say to them, who's your ICP? And they'd be like, it's the quantity surveyor and the main contractor. And I always say, wait a second, is he the guy who sends you a purchase order? Is he the guy who asks you for a quote? Or is he who we should be targeting? Oh, well, he's really only looking at the numbers. He's really only looking at the money. Okay, so who's the guy who's looking at the qualitative side of your tender? Oh, well, that could be the PM. That could be the project manager in the main contractor. And I'm like, okay, now we're getting somewhere. What's he looking for? But actually, I'd be saying to this subcontractor, raise yourself above and align yourself with the consultant team. Align yourself with the architect. Maybe this architect wants to build a modular development and he wants to embrace modularity in his design. And in doing so, he wants to have 4 different types of balconies that he just wants to roll out across all the facades of all his apartment blocks that he's building. In your content marketing, maybe that's the guy we need to be talking to. And they go, oh yeah, no. And then they'll always tell a story. Then they'll always tell me a story and they'll be like, actually, remember that job we did last year? It was actually the architect who recommended us to the main contractor, And that's the type of stuff they miss because the order comes from a QS sitting at a desk, but actually, where did the original inquiry come from? That's what we need to be looking at. Who is the ICP? And very often there's work that needs to be done on that.
Well, it's just funny because you've just highlighted just the application of rigor through questions.
Yes.
And it changes everything.
Yes, I know. And I actually have a neon sign behind me that says, shut up and listen. Because my job, lest I forget it, is to ask questions and listen to the answers.
Well, with a sign like that, you're not going to forget. Well, listen, thank you so much for this. Grateful for your time and everything you shared.
Thanks so much. I really enjoyed it, Andrew.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Low Production High Value Show. Be sure to give us a rating and subscribe to make sure you never miss an episode. Don't forget to check out Volterra at volterradigital.com to learn more about how they can support your social media marketing.